In the middle of the 14th century, something arrived in Europe that would kill more people than all the wars, famines, and disasters that had come before it. Combined, it moved faster than armies. It showed no mercy to kings or peasants. It could not be reasoned with, bought off, or fled from for long. Within 5 years, it would erase nearly half the population of an entire continent from existence. The world that emerged from its shadow would never be the same. This is the story of the Black Death, the plague that ended the medieval world and forged the birth of our modern age. The terror began not with a whisper, but with silence. The silence of empty villages, the silence of unburied dead, the silence of a civilization confronting its own fragility. And in that silence, everything humanity thought it knew about power, faith, and survival would be torn apart. The year is 1340. Europe stands at the height of the medieval age. From the frost-covered forests of Scandinavia to the sun-baked hills of Sicily, Christendom stretches like a vast tapestry of stone cathedrals, fortified castles, and teeming market towns. The continent is alive with commerce and ambition. Trade routes connect London to Constantinople, Venice to the Baltic Sea. Merchants grow wealthy. Kings wage wars over land and legacy. The church towers over all, its authority absolute, its promise clear: obey God's law, and salvation is yours. But beneath this grandeur, the world is fragile. Europe is overcrowded. Harvests are failing. The climate itself has turned cold and unpredictable. Famine stalks the countryside. In cities, people live pressed together in narrow, filthy streets, where waste runs in open gutters and rats multiply in the shadows. The poor survive on scraps. The rich barricade themselves in manor houses, feasting whilst beyond their walls. Desperation grows, yet few can imagine what is coming. Few understand that far to the east, beyond the edges of the known world, something ancient and unspeakable has awakened. A microscopic killer, carried in the blood of fleas and the bodies of rats, is moving westward along the Silk Road. It travels with caravans and armies. It crosses deserts and mountains. It is invisible, it is unstoppable, and it is heading straight for the heart of Europe. The people of the 14th century do not know about bacteria. They do not understand contagion. They believe illness is punishment from God, or poison in the air, or the malign influence of the stars. They are about to face an enemy they cannot see, cannot comprehend, and cannot defeat. The plague arrived in Europe in October 1347. 12 Genoese trading ships dock in the Sicilian port of Messina, returning from the Black Sea. The sailors are dying. Their bodies are covered in grotesque black swellings, oozing blood and pus. They vomit. They bleed from their eyes and mouths. They scream in agony and beg for death. Within days, they are granted it. The authorities order the ships away. But it is already too late. The sickness has stepped ashore. It spreads through Messina like wildfire through dry kindling. Entire households collapse in a matter of hours. Mothers watch their children convulse and die. Fathers succumb before they can bury their wives. The stench of death fills the streets. Priests refuse to give last rites. Physicians flee. Within weeks, Messina is a city of ghosts. From Sicily, the plague moves north. It sweeps across Italy like a dark tide. Florence, Pisa, Genoa, Venice, the great centers of art and learning, become charnel houses. In Florence alone, perhaps 60,000 souls perish. The writer Giovanni Boccaccio will later describe streets piled high with corpses, families abandoning their dying, the collapse of all human decency in the face of overwhelming horror. But the plague does not stop. It crosses the Alps into France. It sails across the Mediterranean to Spain. It follows the rivers into Germany and beyond. By the spring of 1348, it had reached Paris, the jewel of Christendom, and the city began to die. Imagine Paris in the summer of 1348. The narrow streets, once bustling with merchants and pilgrims, are now corridors of despair. Bodies lie in doorways, swollen and blackened, abandoned where they fell. Carts rumble through at dawn, collecting the dead like rubbish. There are too many to bury individually. Mass graves are dug outside the city walls, layer upon layer of corpses, stacked like firewood, covered with quicklime and earth. The symptoms are unmistakable and horrifying. First come the buboes, egg-sized swellings in the groin, armpits, and neck, black and purple, filled with blood and infection. Then the fever. The victim burns from within, sweating and shaking uncontrollably. Many vomit blood. Some develop dark blotches across their skin, subcutaneous hemorrhages that give the plague its name, the Black Death. Most die within 3 to 5 days of the first symptoms, some within hours. There is no cure, no treatment. Physicians try bloodletting, purging, prayers, and potions made from crushed emeralds or unicorn horns. Nothing works. The rich die alongside the poor. Cardinals and beggars share the same fate. The plague is democracy in its most terrible form. Terror grips the population. Some believe the end of the world has come. Preachers declare it is God's punishment for sin. Flagellants roam the countryside, whipping themselves bloody in public displays of penance, begging forgiveness from an angry deity. Others turn to scapegoats. Jews are accused of poisoning wells. Entire communities are massacred in brutal pogroms. Desperation strips away civilization, revealing the raw, frightened animal beneath. By the summer of 1348, the plague had crossed the English Channel. It landed in the port of Melcombe Regis in Dorset, carried aboard a ship from Gascony. Within months, it has spread across England like ink spilled across parchment. London, Bristol, Norwich, York. No town, no village is spared. In the countryside, entire communities vanish. Fields go unplowed. Harvests rot in the ground. Livestock wander untended. The great manors, symbols of feudal power, fall silent as lords and laborers alike succumb. Churches stand empty. In some villages, there is no one left to ring the bells for the dead. The plague moves north into Scotland, where the Scots, seeing the devastation in England, mockingly call it the foul death of the English. They will not laugh for long. By the end of the year, it is killing them too. It sweeps through Ireland. It crosses the North Sea to Scandinavia. It penetrates deep into Russia. Nowhere is safe. Nowhere is beyond its reach. Historians will later estimate that between 1347 and 1353, the Black Death killed somewhere between 75 and 200 million people worldwide. In Europe alone, between 30 and 60% of the population perishes. It is the deadliest pandemic in human history. Entire bloodlines are extinguished. Knowledge is lost. Trades disappear. The living are outnumbered by the dead. And then, as mysteriously as it began, the dying slows. By 1353, the first wave of the Black Death had passed. Europe is left shattered, traumatized, and forever changed. The survivors stumble out into a world that scarcely resembles the one they knew. Villages stand abandoned. Cities are half empty. The landscape is dotted with mass graves. The silence is profound. But from this silence, something unexpected begins to stir. A transformation, a reckoning. The feudal system, that ancient structure of lords and serfs, begins to crumble. For centuries, peasants have been bound to the land, forced to labor for their masters in exchange for protection and shelter. But now, with half the workforce dead, labor becomes valuable. Suddenly, the survivors can demand wages. They can refuse unfair terms. They can move to other estates, other towns, seeking better lives. The nobles try to resist. Laws are passed to freeze wages, to bind workers to the land as before. But the old order cannot hold. Revolts erupt. In France, the Jacquerie. In England, the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. The common people have tasted power, and they will not relinquish it easily. The church, too, is shaken to its foundations. For centuries, it promised that faith and obedience would bring divine protection. But the plague killed the faithful and the sinful alike. It killed priests and bishops who administered last rites. It killed those who prayed and those who did not. The people begin to question, if the church cannot save us, what authority does it truly hold? This crisis of faith will ripple forward through the centuries. It plants the seeds for the Reformation. It opens the door to humanism, to the Renaissance, to a world where human reason and individual worth begin to rival divine authority. There are other changes, quieter, but no less profound. With fewer mouths to feed, food becomes more plentiful. Diets improve. The survivors, traumatized but resilient, rebuild. Innovation flourishes. Labor-saving devices are invented. New agricultural techniques emerge. Trade expands once more. Art and literature reflect trauma. The danse macabre, the dance of death, becomes a common motif. Skeletons cavort with kings and peasants, a grim reminder that death comes for all, regardless of rank or wealth. Memento mori, remember you must die, becomes a cultural obsession. Life is fragile. Time is precious. Make the most of it whilst you can. The Black Death breaks the medieval mind and forces humanity to confront its mortality in a way it never has before. Out of that confrontation comes a new worldview, a new hunger for knowledge, for beauty, for understanding. The Renaissance is born not in spite of the plague, but because of it. The Black Death would return again and again in smaller waves throughout the following centuries, but never again would it strike with such ferocity, such totality. The first wave was the earthquake. The aftershocks would be felt for generations. Today, we know the Black Death was caused by Yersinia pestis, a bacterium carried by fleas living on black rats. We know it spread through trade routes, through the movement of people and goods. We understand it in ways the medieval world never could. But understanding does not diminish its horror. If anything, it magnifies it. This was not divine punishment. It was biology. Chance. A microscopic organism, indifferent to human suffering, rewriting the fate of civilizations. The story of the Black Death is a story of humanity at its most vulnerable and its most resilient. It is a story of terror and tragedy, but also of survival and transformation. The medieval world died with the plague. The modern world was born from its ashes. The Black Death changed Europe, not just by killing millions, but by forcing the survivors to ask new questions about power, about faith, about what it means to be human in a world where death can come swiftly, randomly, and without mercy. And perhaps that is the lesson. That even in our darkest hour, humanity endures. We adapt. We rebuild. The Black Death did not destroy us. It transformed us. That we are stronger than we know. That we can survive the unthinkable. And that from the deepest darkness, light can emerge once more. This was the Black Death, the plague that ended the medieval world and set the course for everything that followed. Its shadow still stretches across history, a reminder of both our fragility and our indomitable will to survive.